Ghostface is back and more frightening than ever in Scream 6. This latest installment in the horror franchise takes several steps in new directions for the better, while also staying true to the spirit of the films. From continuing story and character arcs from the previous film, to swapping out the small town for the big city backdrop of New York, to the cinematography, which is some of, if not the best, the franchise has ever seen. It's this masterful photography that creates a sense of terror surrounding Ghostface, giving audiences the most frightening version of the killer yet. The previous films generally took the fairly modern approach of showing as little of the killer as possible until they strike, preying off of the audience's fear of the unknown. However, in Scream 6, this approach is abandoned in favor of creating a sense of fear over this one specific killer, much akin to Halloween's take on the monster behind the mask, allowing for the fear of the entity behind the mask to take center stage. It's a brilliant move for the film, as it still allows for the fear of the unknown, since we don't know the identity of Ghostface until the end, but also creates a sense of dread over the image just of the costume itself, which was done incredibly well in the film's subway scene, showing a wide array of people in costumes, and specifically Ghostface costumes, adding in the feeling of paranoia. Before even Halloween, this style was standard for old-school horror and monster flicks that would often make prominent use of the incredible creature designs. In keeping with that style, there is generally very little done to accentuate the sense of fear through use of any sort of unusual camera angles like Dutch angles or extreme close-ups, but typically just presents the masked killer as such, framing them up in head-to-toe full shots, waist-up mediums, or just standard close-ups, allowing for the mask and the performer to do their job. Ghostface is also typically placed in the center of the frame, drawing the viewer's attention right to them, and shot on slightly longer lenses than our main characters, placing us in their shoes and putting the killer somewhere in the distance. Scream 6 also makes prominent use of Steadicam and handheld shots, giving a very man-on-the-ground, almost documentary-like feeling, further adding to the suspense. Now, spoiler warning, one of the most clever cinematography tricks that the film uses is in its lighting design, which, if you watch carefully, reveals the identity of the killer early on in the film, and like I mentioned earlier, it takes inspiration from classic horror flicks. When the group investigates the Ghostface shrine, all the characters are lit from just overhead with a very soft and even light. However, in the few shots on the yet-to-be-revealed killer, he is lit from the bottom up with a very hard light, a classic trope of horror films. This not only looks great and is just pure horror lighting at its best, but it's also believable based on the source, since the actor is staged directly next to a practical light from one of the props. Now, fair warning before you go and see this film, Scream 6 is not only the most frightening entry in the franchise to date, but by far the bloodiest, with grotesque depictions of violence and gore that are extreme even by the standards of a typical slasher film. But if you can stomach it, you will be treated by one of the most engaging and well-shot films in the series.
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?